Welcome, tonight is quiet, and these stories are meant to be heard in the dark. Real confessions, real heartbreak, and real healing, shared softly, without judgment. Before we begin, tell me in the comments, are you listening for comfort or curiosity? And what time is it for you right now? Story 1. The day I found my husband's other family. I remember the exact moment my life split into a before and an after. It was a Tuesday, and the air in our quiet suburban home tasted like dust and silence. I was holding a piece of paper so ordinary it felt like a betrayal, in itself a crumpled receipt from a gas station 200 miles away, for a brand of gum my husband, Ben, hates. But it wasn't the receipt. It was the phone number scribbled on the back in a woman's looping handwriting, and below it, a single word, always. My name is Sarah. For 12 years, my normal was a comfortable, if somewhat quiet, symphony. The morning grind of coffee brewing, the soft thud of the newspaper on the driveway, the distant hum of Ben's electric razor from our bathroom. We had a rhythm, Ben and I, built on years of shared history, and what I believed was a deep, if unspoken, understanding. We met in college, two shy bookworms who found courage in each other's silence. We built this Lifea Georgian-style house with too many windows, a mortgage we could just manage, a garden I tended with a devotion I once reserved for him. The cracks, I see now, were always there. I just called them life. The way he'd sometimes look at me over dinner, his eyes focused somewhere just past my left ear, as if he were listening to a distant radio broadcast. The increasing work trips that always seemed to fall on weekends. Trips he'd return from smelling of strange laundry detergent and looking emotionally wrung out, claiming client dinners were exhausting. I'd find receipts in his jacket pockets for diners in towns I'd never heard of, and I'd quietly throw them away, telling myself he was just bad at expense reports. The biggest crack, the one I papered over with frantic hope, was the children, or rather, the lack of them. For years, we tried. Doctors, tests, treatments that left me hollowed out and raw. The silence in the nursery wed, painted a soft yellow, became a physical presence in our home. Ben stopped talking about it altogether. He'd just pat my shoulder, a gesture that felt less like comfort and more like a period at the end of a sentence. We were no longer allowed to speak. I thought his distance was grief. I thought his emotional absence was a shared wound. I was so busy tending to my own heartache. I never truly considered he might have found a salve for his own somewhere else. Have you ever had a gut feeling so profound it feels like a physical sickness, but you shoved it down because the truth seemed too catastrophic to entertain? That's where I lived for months. In the queasy yellow light of suspicion, I refused to acknowledge. The discovery didn't happen in a dramatic flash. It was a slow, dripping leak that finally collapsed the ceiling. It started with the receipt. I wasn't snooping, I was gathering laundry. his jeans pocket. The gas station was in Chesterton, a place he had no reason to be. The number, that word, always. My heart didn't hammer, it just went very, very still. Later that night, under the guise of updating our shared calendar, I asked him innocently about his last trip. Just the usual, he said, not looking up from his tablet. Meeting in the city, stayed at the Marriott. The Marriott was south. Chesterton was north. The lie was so casual, so effortless, it stole the breath from my lungs. I became a ghost in my own home, moving silently, observing. I checked phone bills call to a Chesterton number, lasting 47 minutes the week before. I found a forgotten social media account under a variation of his name. It was mostly empty, but there was one public photo from 2 years prior. It was a picture of a park. In the corner of the shot, blurred but unmistakable, was Ben's hand resting on the shoulder of a little boy who was flying a red kite. The date stamp was my birthday. The day he told me he was stuck in an all-day, off-site corporate strategy session. The escalation was internal, a silent scream building pressure behind my eyes. I hired a discreet investigator. I told myself it was for clarity, for peace of mind. What I received a week later was not peace, but a war declared on my entire reality. A PDF file, cold and clinical, filled with dates, times, and photographs. Ben leaving a small, cheerful-looking house in Chesterton. Ben at a playground, pushing a little boy on a swing. A woman with dark hair laughing beside him. Ben carrying groceries into that same house. The woman's name was Alina. The boy's name was Leo. He was 4 years old. The details were the knives. The investigator's notes mentioned a neighbor who chatted, believing him to be a friend of the family. The neighbor referred to Ben as Leo's dad. He'd been living a parallel life for over 5 years. He had a son he'd named Leo, while I wept over empty rooms. The financial betrayal was its own special hell. I traced withdrawals, a second bank account I never knew about, payments for pediatrician visits, a preschool tuition, money from our joint savings subtly siphoned away to support his other, fuller family. I confronted him in the one place that still felt like mine, my garden. It was a Sunday afternoon, the air thick with the scent of lavender and cut grass. I didn't yell. My voice was a flat, dead thing. I held up a printed photo from the rapport them, Alina, and Leo at an ice cream stand. Who are they, Ben? The color drained from his face. It was a complete, systemic shutdown. He didn't try to deny it. He just crumpled, folding onto the wrought iron bench as if his bones had dissolved. The confession poured out of him, not like a torrent, but like a toxic spill. He met Alina at a conference. It started as a fling, a distraction from the pain of our infertility. Then she got pregnant. He said he stayed for the child, that he felt obligated, that he was trapped. He used words like complicated and didn't want to hurt you, and I love you both. Each word was a smaller, crueler betrayal than the last. There was a moment of false hope, a grotesque parody of reconciliation. He cried. He begged. He promised to end it, to cut them off, to move with me to another state. He said I was his real life, his home. And God helped me, a part of me, the part that had built its entire identity on being Sarian Ben, wanted to believe it. I wanted to believe we could suture this canyon shut. For 3 agonizing days, we moved through the house like sleepwalkers, talking in hushed tones about therapists and fresh starts. I even let him hold me one night, and his familiar smell made me sob, not with relief, but with a grief so vast it had no bottom. The climax wasn't a fight. It was a quiet phone call that happened while I was pretending to be asleep. He thought I'd taken a sleeping pill. I heard him in his study, his voice low, tender, a voice I hadn't heard in years. "It's okay, buddy. Daddy's here. I'll read 2 stories next time, I promise. Tell Mommy I love her." The mommy wasn't me. In that moment, listening to him soothe his Sonhai's Sonany hope of salvaging our marriage turned to ash. He wasn't a man trapped by obligation. He was a father. He was someone else's partner. He had a whole heart living in another zip code, and I was just the keeper of his empty shell. The next morning, I was numb. I made coffee. I watched him nervously watch me. I finally spoke. "You have to go to him, to Leo." He started to protest, to resurrect the script from days before. I cut him off. "You don't get to choose me. You lost that right. That little boy deserves his father. A full-time father, not a secret, not a weekend visitor." The realization that hit me wasn't about Ben or Alina. It was about Leo. An innocent child existed in the shadow of my marriage. My pain was immense, but his potential, pain growing up with a father who saw him as a secret, was a crime I couldn't be complicit in. The legal divorce was a brutal financial and emotional dissection. The custody battle, of course, wasn't mine to fight. Ben fought Alina for partial custody of Leo, and I sat in the courtroom hallway during one of their hearings, a ghost watching the living fight over a life. The irony was a bitter pill. He was fighting for the child he had, while I was dissolving the dream of the child we never did. It's been a year now. I sold the house with too many windows. The silence is different. It's mine. It's not waiting to be filled. Some days the anger is a fire. Some days the grief is a lead weight. But there are other days, small moments, where I feel a fragile sense of peace. I am learning who Sarah is, alone. I am learning that my capacity for love was not the flaw. His capacity for deceit was. I didn't just lose a husband. I lost the entire story I told myself about who I was, what my life meant. I am rebuilding, word by painful word, a new story. And in this one, the main character is finally, terrifyingly, just me. Thank you so much for listening to my story. It's one of the hardest things I've ever shared. If you've ever faced a betrayal that rewired your understanding of reality, I see you. I'd be honored if you'd share your own thoughts or experiences in the comments below. Your stories remind us we're not alone in these complicated human journeys. If this resonated with you, please consider liking this video and subscribing for more real, raw stories about love, survival, and the messy truth of relationships. Story 2. The day I found my sister's diary. I never thought the person it'd have to survive would be my own reflection. The person in the mirror feels like a stranger most days now, her eyes holding a quiet devastation I don't recognize. It all started in a place that was supposed to be my sanctuary, my childhood bedroom, revisited not for comfort, but for escape. The normalcy, in hindsight, was already fraying. It was a Tuesday in late October, the kind where the sky is a flat, endless gray. Sarah, had driven the 40 minutes to my parents' house under the guise of helping my mother sort through old linens for a church donation. The real reason was that I couldn't bear another evening in the suffocating silence of my own quiet suburban home with my husband, Ben. The silence wasn't peaceful. It was a dense, living thing, filled with every unasked question and every carefully avoided glance. For months, our conversations had been logistical satellites passing in the night. Did you pay the water bill? Your mother called. I'll be home late. The easy laughter that once filled our kitchen had been replaced by the hum of the refrigerator and the distant, tinny sound of our separate televisions. I told myself this was just what marriage became after 15 years of comfortable, if somewhat lonely, partnership. We were a team, managing a life, a mortgage, the shared care of our aging golden retriever, Sam. But that day, at my parents', the first true crack appeared, though I mistook it for simple nostalgia. After the linens were sorted, Mom went downstairs to start dinner. I found myself drifting into my old room, a time capsule of lavender walls and faded boy band posters. I sat on the twin bed, the chenille bedspread scratchy under my palms, and let out a breath I felt like it'd been holding for a year. The room smelled of dust and dried roses, a scent that immediately shaved decades off my life. I opened the top drawer of my old desk, not looking for anything in particular, just touching the artifacts of a simpler self. A bundle of friendship bracelets, a stack of mixed CDs with bubbled handwriting, a dried corsage from a senior prom, and then my fingers brushed against the faux leather cover of a journal. It wasn't mine. My journals were flowery, lock and key affairs. This was a sleek, black notebook. I opened it and saw my sister Chloe's familiar, looping script on the first page. A date from 7 years ago. A small smile touched my lips. Chloe, 2 years younger, had always been the dramatic one, the artist. I figured it'd find angsty poetry or sketches. I tucked it under my arm, thinking it'd tease her about it later. A little light sibling ribbing to break the ice that had formed between us lately. A distance id blamed on her demanding job and my own marital fog. I took the diary home. It sat on my nightstand for 2 days, a benign object. Then, on a Thursday night, Ben texted he was working late again. The word working had started to feel like a plastic placeholder for something else, something my mind shied away from naming. With Sam snoring at my feet, I picked up the diary, more out of boredom than curiosity. I started reading. The early entries were so Chloe, passionate about a film shed scene, furious at a coworker, detailed. Story 3. The memory my mother made me forget. My name is Sarah, and I have lived my entire life inside a perfect, beautiful lie. I am 34 years old, and I only just met my father. Not at his funeral, not through a grainy photograph, but in the warm, cluttered living room of a stranger's house, where he hugged me so tightly I thought my ribs would crack, and he smelled like sawdust and spearmint gum. The man I was told had died a hero before I was born is alive, and for 28 years, my mother convinced us both that I was better off without him. This is not a story of a secret affair. It's a story of a stolen life and the quiet, devastating war my mother waged to win it. My normal was a curated museum of his absence. Our quiet suburban home was a shrine to a ghost. On the mantelpiece stood a single, handsome photo of a young man in an army uniformy father, Michael, killed in a training exercise my mother, Elaine, would say with a practiced, somber grace, her hand fluttering to the gold cross at her neck. We celebrated his birthday every year with angel food cake. I wrote him letters on Father's Day that my mother would send to heaven by burning them in the backyard fire pit. She was a pillar of stoic grief, a beautiful widow who had sacrificed everything. I built my identity on being her comfort, her good girl. The cracks were there, but I was trained not to see them. My grandfather, her father, would get a tight look around his eyes whenever Michael's name was mentioned. A silent storm I mistook for shared pain. My mother never dated, not once. She said Shed had her great love, and that was enough. I thought it was the most tragic, romantic thing in the world. The first real fissure appeared not with a bang, but with a beep. It was a Tuesday. I was in my childhood bedroom, which had become my temporary refuge after a bad breakup. I was looking for my old senior yearbook to show a friend a hilarious haircut, rummaging in the back of my closet where my mom stored memory boxes. I pulled down a heavy plastic bin labeled Sarah Baby. Beneath the tiny knitted booties and the faded hospital bracelet was a manila envelope. Inside weren't more baby photos, but legal documents. My birth certificate, which I'd seen before, and underneath it, a final judgment of dissolution of marriage. My parents' divorce decree, granted when I was 6 years old. The date swam before my eyes. He died when I was 1. That's what she said. He died when I was 1. The paper felt cold and official in my hands. The room, with its cheerful yellow walls and pom-pom trim, seemed to tilt. I heard my mother humming downstairs, the familiar sound of her making tea. The world split into two, the one where she was humming, and the one where this piece of paper existed. Have you ever held something in your hands that you knew instantly would dismantle your entire understanding of reality? That moment of suspended animation where the truth hasn't hit you yet, but your body already knows. Your stomach drops, your ears ring, and every detail of the room becomes hyper-sharp, forever etched in acid. I didn't confront her. Not then. A strange, cold calm settled over me. I took photos of the documents with my phone and placed everything back exactly as it was. That night, over meatloaf, I watched her. I saw the careful way she constructed her sentences, the slight hesitation before she answered any question about the past. I saw not my mother, but a strategist. I began to dig. It was the digital age. Ghosts leave footprints. With just his name Michael thorning his last known branch of service, I found him. It took less than an hour. A Michael Thorne, retired Army sergeant, living 3 states over. A profile picture on a veterans forum. A man in his late 50s, with kind eyes and my smile. My smile. I stared at that pixelated image until my vision blurred. Alive. He was alive. I found an obituary for his mother-me-grandmother who died 5 years ago. It listed survivors, including her beloved son, Michael Thorne. I was not listed. I was erased. The confrontation wasn't dramatic. It was a quiet unraveling in our sun-drenched kitchen. I placed the printed divorce decree on the granite countertop between us. I didn't say anything. She looked at it, and all the color drained from her face. The performance was over. "Sarah," she whispered, her voice stripped of all its usual melodic certainty. What followed wasn't a confession, but a justification. A torrent of words I had to piece together like shards of glass. They hadn't been happy. He was gone often. She was lonely. He had a temper, she said. He was controlling. When they divorced, it was messy. He got visitation. And then, when I was 6, he missed a weekend. He called, said he had to work. She saw her chance. She told him she was moving for a fresh start, gave him a P.O. box address that she closed a month later. She told me he had died. She told him I wanted nothing to do with him, that I was angry and hurt, and had asked her to make him go away. She showed me forged letters from a lawyer, she said, to make it official in his mind. She built a wall of mutual, heartbroken silence between a father and his daughter. "I protected you," she kept saying, her hands gripping the edge of the counter. From the instability, from the disappointment. "I gave you a clean story, a noble story. I did it for you." For a week, I lived in a numb haze. Part of me wanted to believe her. The narrative was seductive. The selfish, absent father, the devoted, protective mother. It was easier than the alternative. I almost convinced myself that maybe reaching out to him would be a betrayal of her, of the life shed built for us. That was the false hope that I could contain this knowledge and go back to some new version of normal, one where I pitied her instead of raged at her, but I kept going back to that forum photo, to my smile on his face. I drafted 100 emails to the address id found on a plumbing company website owned a small business. I deleted them all. Finally, I sent 3 sentences. My name is Sarah Ellis. My mother is Elaine Ellis. If you are Michael Thorne, I think you might be my father, and I would like to talk. He replied in 12 minutes. Sarah, I am your father. I have been waiting for this email for 28 years. Please call me anytime. Anytime. His phone number was below. His words were simple, but they shattered the last of my mother's carefully constructed fiction. He had been waiting. He hadn't abandoned me. He had been told to stay away. The climax wasn't a screaming match. It was a conversation in a parked rental car outside a modest blue house in a town I'd never heard of. I had driven there without telling my mother. I sat there for 20 minutes, shaking. I finally walked to the door. He opened it before I could knock. He just looked at me, his eyes wide and wet, and said, "Oh, there you are." He looked exactly like his picture, but softer, with lines of worry and hope etched deep. He held out a hand, then pulled it back, unsure. I stepped forward and hugged him. He cried. I cried. We sat in his living room, surrounded by the evidence of a life lived without photos of fishing trips with friends, a retirement plaque, a well-worn recliner. He showed me a box. In it was every card, every drawing, every letter he had ever sent me for birthdays and Christmases, all returned unopened, marked return to sender in my mother's handwriting. He had kept them. He showed me court documents he defiled for years, trying to find me, until his lawyer told him the cost would ruin him with no guarantee. He had a photo of me at 5, at a playground, the last visitation weekend. I took that, he said, his thumb stroking the faded edge. I loved you so much it terrified me. And then she told me you hated me. She said you called me a monster. I thought I had to let you go for your sake. I stayed for 2 days. We talked about everything and nothing. He told me I had his mother's laugh. He showed me how to plane a piece of wood smooth in his workshop. The smell of sawdust is now the smell of found things. I told him about my life, the phantom father I'd mourned, the mother I no longer knew. The love was immediate and immense, but it was a love scarred by a canyon of lost time. It was fraught with a grief for what was stolen first days of school, teaching me to drive, boyfriends to scare off. It was overwhelming. I returned home. My mother was sitting at the kitchen table, the same place her lie had come undone. She looked ancient. "Did you see him?" she asked. I nodded. The silence that followed was the true climax. It was the sound of a lifetime of devotion curdling into something else. The love was still there, tangled in the roots of the betrayal, but it was changed. I looked at this woman who had read me stories, who had nursed me through heartbreak, who had built a world for me with her own 2 hands, and I realized she had also built its prison. "I will never understand," I said, my voice quiet. "You didn't protect me from a monster. You made a monster out of a man who loved me, You protected me from a love you were jealous of." She didn't deny it. She just said, "I was so afraid of being alone." And in that moment, I saw the scared, lonely woman underneath the pillar of strength. It didn't forgive a thing, but it explained everything. That was 6 months ago. I am navigating 2 relationships now, both forever altered. I see my father monthly. We are learning each other gingerly, joyfully, with an undercurrent of profound sadness for the decades we can't get back. With my mother, it is a fragile, distant peace. We speak, but the trust is gone. I look at her and see the architect of my greatest loss. She looks at me and sees the living proof of her greatest sin. I live in the wreckage of her good intentions, picking through the shards of the beautiful lie, trying to find the pieces of a real truth to build something new. I had a father all along. I just had to forget him first. Thank you so much for listening to my story. It's one of the hardest things I've ever had to put into words, but there's a strange comfort in sharing it. If you've ever uncovered a family secret that changed everything, or if you're struggling with the complicated aftermath of a betrayal, please share your thoughts in the comments below. Let's talk about it. And if you found this story compelling, please give this video a like and subscribe for more real, raw stories about the messy, beautiful, and heartbreaking world of human relationships. Story 4. The day my husband's secret family called. My therapist says I should write this down. That putting the chaos into words might help me find the edges of it, might make it feel less like I am drowning in an ocean with no shore in sight. So here it is. The day I found out my husband of 12 years had another wife, another child, another entire life running parallel to mine, was the day I stopped believing in reality. Because how can the man who made me coffee every morning, who remembered my mother's birthday when I forgot, who held my hand through 2 miscarriages, be a stranger? How can a person be a ghost in their own life? The morning it began was a Tuesday, utterly ordinary. The smell of burnt toast and the sound of our daughter, Lily, practicing her violin for the school concert filled our quiet suburban home. Ryan was at the kitchen island, scrolling through his phone, a half-empty mug of coffee beside him. He was already in his suit, the crisp blue one Id picked out for him. "Y'all knock 'em dead at the quarterly review," I said, kissing the top of his head. He smiled, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. "Just a lot of pressure," he murmured, his thumbs swiping rapidly. I didn't think much of it. Ryan was a regional manager. Pressure was his middle name. But now, I remember the way his shoulders were hunched, the way he angled the phone slightly away from me. A tiny, silent pivot. The first crack. The second crack came later that day. I was tidying up our bedroom, collecting laundry from his side of the bed. A receipt fell from the pocket of his trousers. It was from a diner, a place called Mel's Griddle, in a town about 45 minutes away. The date was from the previous Saturday, when he told me he was going on a long bike ride to clear his head. The total was for 2 adult breakfasts and 1 kid's meal. A cold, thin trickle of something not yet suspicion, more like disorientation ran down my spine. He hated biking near traffic. He always said back roads were safer. I stared at the receipt, the mundane list of pancakes, orange juice, chocolate milk. I folded it neatly and put it in my jewelry box on top of my grandmother's pearls. I didn't know why I kept it. I just did. The third crack was the phone call. It was a week later, late afternoon. Lily was at a friend's house. Ryan was, according to his calendar, at a team-building offsite. The house was so quiet I could hear the hum of the refrigerator. When my phone rang, an unknown number with the same area code as the diner on the receipt, I almost didn't answer. But something, that gut-deep tug, made me press accept. "Is this Maya?" a woman's voice asked. It was young, tired, edged with a tension I recognized from my own voice during the worst of our fertility struggles. "Yes, who is this?" "My name is Alina. I think you're married to my husband." The words didn't compute. They were nonsense syllables. "I am sorry, you must have the wrong number. My husband is Ryan Carter." "Ryan James Carter," she said, and the use of his full name, his hated middle name, felt like a punch. Date of birth, November 7th. Drives a dark gray SUV. He has a scar on his left knee from a childhood accident. He's allergic to penicillin. With each fact, the room tilted. These were our intimate details, the trivia of a shared life. He told me he's a logistics consultant. He's gone for work a lot. But he's here with us 3 or 4 days a week. We have a son, Ben, he's 4, silence. A roaring, vacuum-like silence filled my head. I was standing in the middle of my living room, the setting sun casting long, accusatory shadows across the rug we'd picked out together. I saw my own hand, pale and trembling, gripping the phone. "This isn't funny," I whispered. "I wish it was," Alina said, and her voice broke. "I found your number on an old insurance form in his glove compartment. I've had this number for 6 months. I've dialed it and hung up 100 times. But my son, he started preschool. He talks about his dad all the time. And I looked at Ryan, really looked at him, and I knew I was living a lie. And if I am, then you are, too. Have you ever had a moment where your entire past reshapes itself? Where every happy memory gets a shadow? Every loving gesture becomes a question mark? That's what it felt like. The foundation of my life wasn't just cracking. It was revealing itself to have been built over a sinkhole. I didn't confront Ryan that night. I played the part. I made dinner. I asked about his offsite. He told a funny story about his colleague Dave trying rock climbing. The detail was perfect. I watched his face, the easy smile, the warm eyes that met mine, and I felt a terror so profound it was peaceful. This man was a performance artist, and I had been his most devoted audience for 12 years. After he fell asleep, I went into his home office. I knew his passwords, we had no secrets, or so I thought. But I found nothing on his laptop, nothing in his email. It was was too clean. Then I remembered an old tablet he never used, tucked in a drawer. It powered on, and it was still logged into an account I didn't recognize a second Google account. The inbox was a monument to my ignorance. Emails confirming reservations at family-friendly hotels in that town, 45 minutes away. Online receipts for children's toys for a double stroller. Photographs, hundreds of them. There was a woman with kind, sad eyes and dark hair, Alina. And there was a little boy with Ryan's unmistakable smile, Ryan's cowlick. He was blowing out 4 candles on a dinosaur cake. He was held in Ryan's arms at what looked like a park. He was sleeping on Ryan's chest on a sofa I didn't recognize. The timeline in the photos stretched back over 5 years. 5 years. Lily was 7. This meant he had been living this double life since she was 2. The physical sensation was not of a broken heart, but of a deleted soul. A numb, hollowing out. I sat on the floor of his office, the cold hardwood pressing into my legs, the blue light of the tablet washing over me, and I simply ceased to be Maya. The next week was a blur of false normalcy. I became a detective in my own home, moving with a quiet, surgical precision. I hired a private investigator. The reports came back. A modest house in a middle-class neighborhood, leased in Ryan's name. A car registered to him at that address. Picket fence, tire swing in the yard. The complete set. I felt a bizarre, detached sense of admiration for the sheer logistical feat of it all. The energy, the planning, the compartmentalization. I also felt a strange, nascent connection to Alina. We were sister wives in a cult we hadn't chosen, bound by the same lyre. I decided to meet her. I told Ryan I was taking Lily to my mother's for a girls' weekend. Instead, I drove to the town, to the diner on the receipt Mel's griddle. I saw her before she saw me. She was in a booth by the window, a little boy next to her, coloring. Ben. He looked so much like Lily at that age it stole my breath. Alina looked up, our eyes met, and it was like looking into a distorted mirror. We saw the same shock, the same devastation, the same love for our children that was now a source of unimaginable pain. We didn't hug. We just sat. "He's with her this weekend," I said, my voice flat. "At my mother's house. He's probably grilling burgers in my mother's backyard right now." Alina nodded, stirring her coffee endlessly. "He told me he was at a logistics conference in Cleveland. He sent me a picture of a generic hotel room. We exchanged facts, piecing together the calendar of our shared husband. The business trips, the late nights, the helping a friend move. A perfect, interlocking puzzle of deceit. Ben looked up at me with Ryan's eyes. "Are you a friend of Mommy's?" he asked. "Yes, sweetie," I said, my throat tight. "I am." Alina reached over and squeezed my hand. It was a gesture of such profound, shared wreckage that I finally started to cry. In that moment, there was no hatred between us. There was only the vast, empty space where the man we both loved was supposed to be. The confrontation happened not with a bang. but in the sterile, quiet hallway of a family court mediation office, a place that smelled of lemon cleaner and despair. We had agreed, Alina and I, to confront him together, with lawyers present. We couldn't risk him spinning more lies, playing us against each other. Seeing him walk in, his face pale and clammy as he saw the two of us sitting side by side, was the climax of my life. It wasn't rage I felt. It was a deep, weary finality. "Ryan," I said, my voice was calm. "We know about Ben. We know about the house. We know about everything." He looked from me to Alina, his mask of the confident manager, the loving husband and father, completely shattered. What was left was a frightened, hollow man. "My Alina, I can explain." "Explain what?" Alina asked, her voice trembling but clear. "Explain how you married me 5 years ago, how you signed Ben's birth certificate, or how you've been married to Maya for 12. Which marriage is the fake one, Ryan? Or are they both?" He crumpled into a chair. The excuses that tumbled out were pathetic, a child's logic. He loved us both in different ways. He got in too deep. He didn't know how to stop. He was afraid of hurting us. Each word was a nail in the coffin of the man I thought I knew. The man I loved had never existed. He was a composite, a fiction created to serve his own needs. The legal aftermath is still unfolding. Bigamy charges, a tangled web of assets, of dual mortgages, of confused insurance policies. The divorce papers are a novel of betrayal. Lily knows her daddy did something very wrong that hurt Mommy very much, and that he has another little boy. She is too young to understand the scope, and I am grateful for that. I see Alina sometimes. We don't speak often, but there's a bond, a ceasefire born of mutual annihilation. We are co-victims of the same crime, navigating the same wreckage, trying to build shelters for our children from the debris. My therapist was right. Writing it down does help you find the edges, but the map it creates is of a foreign country, a place called after. I live there now. I wake up in it every morning in my new apartment that smells only of me and Lily. The coffee I make for myself tastes different. The silence has a new texture. I am a woman piecing together a self from what was left behind after the explosion. And sometimes, in my quietest moments, I wonder if the deepest betrayal wasn't the other family, but the theft of my own reality. He didn't just break my heart. He made me doubt every single moment of my own life. And that is a ghost I will be learning to live with for a very, very long time. Thank you for listening to my story. It's one of the hardest things I've ever had to share, but there's a strange comfort in knowing you're not alone in facing the unimaginable. If you've ever experienced a betrayal that rewrote your past, please share your thoughts in the comments below. Your stories and support mean the world. If you found this video compelling, please give it a like and subscribe for more real, raw stories about love, survival, and the unexpected turns of life. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe for more Reddit relationship stories.